Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is the North Affair podcast, Conversations Without Barriers. I'm your host, Doug from Ontario, Canada. I hope everybody is having a good weekend. The beginning of the weekend, it's always nice to get to Saturday, Sunday, and just relax, take a step back, take a deep breath. Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, I usually, talk about homelessness and housing and policies surrounding that. But tonight is a different show. Sovereignty, sovereignty threats, and the rule of law. Just the other day, these are not my words. These are from that dictator in the United States, Donald Trump. Donald Trump says his own morality is the only thing that can stop him from world dominance. I don't need international law. Trump said that his only guardrail as he looks to obtain more global power is his own morality. It was an interview with the New York Times. He said he doesn't need international law to dictate his approach to foreign policy. Also, in the interview, the president doubled down on his plans to take military action in Latin America and potentially on Greenland. I don't need international law, Trump said in an interview. When he was pressed further, the president said he understood that his administration would need to abide by international laws. However, he added, it depends what your definition of international law is. So there's only one definition. Doesn't depend on what definition you understand under international law. International law for people who don't like rules, like Donald Trump. International law is not complicated. It's not academic. It's not theoretical. You don't get to steal land with tanks, not with threats, and not with the hard way. Because Trump said in his own words, we're going to take Greenland the easy way or the hard way. You don't get to hit your neighbors. Not because you're bigger, not because you're angry, not because it polls well. You keep your damn promises. If you sign a treaty, you honor it. If you make an agreement, you follow it. If you're in an alliance, you don't threaten your allies. That's the whole system. Break those rules, and you're not tough. You're not destabilizing force. You're a destabilizing force. Greenland, the red line, you don't cross. Greenland is not a real estate listing. Donald Trump thinks he can just buy Greenland. Marco Rubio is going to visit sometime this coming week. And what is he going to do? Bring a a briefcase full of fucking money, like some fucking mafia guy. It's not a bargaining chip. It's not a prize. It's a self-governing territory of Denmark, a NATO ally, with its own people, its own government, and its own rights. So when someone says, "We'll we'll take it we will take it if we have to use the hard way," and what that actually means, when Donald Trump says we're either going to do it the easy way or we're going to do it the hard way, you're threatening a NATO member. You're threatening Arctic stability. You're threatening the legal order that prevents wars. And Europe didn't hesitate. They responded with a unified message. Greenland's future belongs to Greenland and Denmark, full stop. Canada backed that up because Canada understands the Arctic. Canada understands sovereignty. And Canada understands that if you let one threat slide, you invite the next one. It's just like Donald Trump thinks Canada should be the 51st state. Trump thinks by doing it economically with his tariffs, coercion, Donald Trump thinks there's an imaginary line drawn in the sand some centuries ago. There is a structural border between Canada and the United States. And yes, lakes and oceans separate us too. We're a sovereign nation, we're a NATO nation. Article 5, the clause that ends the conversation. Article 5 is NATO's spine. It says, attack one ally, you're dealing with all of them. It's been invoked once after 9/11, and it changed the world. But here's the part people don't like to say out loud. Article 5 was never designed for a member threatening another member. By saying we're going to do it the easy way or the hard way, that is a threat on a NATO member. Because that scenario is so reckless, so destabilizing, so outside the realm of normal behavior, that the treaty architects didn't even consider it. If a NATO member attacked Denmark or Greenland, the alliance would face a crisis that could tear it apart. It would be the end of NATO. That's why Denmark said, if the US attacks Greenland, everything stops, including NATO. Not because they want that outcome, because that's the treaty. That's what the treaty demands. Donald Trump has threatened to go into Mexico, a sovereign nation. Over drugs. Mexico is not weak. Mexico is not isolated. Mexico is not a punching bag. It's a sovereign nation. It's a sovereign nation with a massive economy, deep ties to Canada and the United States, international legal protections, a population that doesn't respond well to intimidation. Threatening Mexico isn't strategy, it's theater. But theater has consequences. Because when you normalize threats, you normalize instability, and instability is contagious. Mexico knows the law, Canada knows the law, the world knows the law, and the law is clear. You don't get to threaten to take territory from a sovereign state. Not in 2026, not in North America, not anywhere. People would say, well, who's next? Is Canada next? The wrong question. People ask if Greenland was targeted and now Mexico, who's next? Why are these threats even being made at all? Donald Trump tells his bullshit lies every single day. He sits there in front of the camera and tells you that there's thousands of Russian ships, thousands of Chinese ships circling fucking Greenland. They are thousands of miles away. He needs it for national security reasons. We know that's bullshit. We know that's absolutely bullshit. All the minerals on the island of Greenland is what Donald Trump is after. Just like the oil in Venezuela. Has nothing to do with national security. He uses that rhetoric all the time. Why are these threats being made at all? Because they're politically useful, because they create headlines, because they project toughness to a domestic audience. This isn't geopolitics, it's performance. But here's the danger. When powerful countries use threats as props, smaller countries have to take them seriously. Because history is full of leaders who said, relax, it's just talk, right before everything went sideways. Donald Trump is Hitler 2.0. So responsible governments don't shrug, they respond. Canada's role, the Arctic adult in the room. Canada doesn't posture. Canada doesn't escalate. Canada doesn't play games with sovereignty. Canada does three things. It reinforces the law. Borders are real. Treaties are binding. Threats are unacceptable. It stabilizes the region. Canada is the Arctic's anchor. When the temperature rises, Canada cools the room. Because if rules collapse, the Arctic collapses. We have a NATO alliance between Canada and the United States in the Arctic. already. It's been there for decades. It protects the system because if the rules collapse, the Arctic collapses. If the Arctic collapses, North America collapses. And if North America collapses, the world follows. Canada's job is not to shout, it's to hold the line. And Canada is holding it. Power isn't a license to break the rules. But Donald Trump doesn't follow any rules. Rules don't apply to him. The law does not apply to Donald Trump. He's a convicted felon, 32 counts of fraud, convicted in the court of law by his peers, found guilty of sexual interference, convicted. He doesn't give a shit about the law. There's a myth that powerful countries can do whatever they want, and Donald Trump thinks that way. Sanctions, right? That's not how the world works to begin with. Powerful country, it doesn't matter if it's the United States. Sanctions, diplomatic isolation, alliance fractures, economic blowback, legal consequences, domestic backlash. The world is not a playground, it's a system. And if the system only works if the biggest players follow the rules. Sovereignty is not optional. Greenland is not up for grabs, full stop. Canada is not silent. Neither is NATO. Neither is the United Nations. NATO is not optional. International law is not a suggestion. Threats don't make you strong. Respecting sovereignty does. Keeping your word does. Honoring treaties does. Because the moment borders become negotiable, the world becomes unrecognizable. And that's why countries like Canada, Denmark, and others around the world are drawing the line clearly, publicly, and unapologetically. Donald Trump said, and at the beginning of the show, in his own words, said that his only guardrail as he looks to obtain more global power is his own morality. This was an interview with the New York Times. He said he doesn't need international law to dictate his approach to foreign policy. And he doubled down on his plans to take military action, if necessary, even against Greenland. That's right out of the playbook of Hitler. And you see what's going on in the United States today. You saw what happened just recently in Minnesota. My heartfelt condolences goes out to Nicole Good's family, her friends, her community, her neighbors. You have a Gestapo in the United States. You have a Nazi dictator as a leader in the United States in his Nazi regime. This is time for all Americans to stand up for rule of law. This is time for all Americans to stand up for the Constitution of the United States. Whether you're Republican or you're Democrat, you need to put your your political ideologies aside. The rule of law within your own country. What happened the other day to Nicole Good should not happen again. You've seen the video, I know you have. The whole world has seen it. And the whole world has reacted to it. Not just in the United States. I've never seen anything more fucking horrific in my life. You think about the dictator you have in your country. Only the American people can change that politics. That's why it's so important to go out and vote. You can change the landscape in the United States in your upcoming election in November. Donald Trump is very worried about that, and he should be very worried about that. If Donald Trump could find a way to stop your midterm elections, believe me, he damn will try. I told you before the elections that not only is Donald Trump dangerous to the United States, Donald Trump is dangerous to the world. This is Hitler 2.0. Thank you for joining me tonight, ladies and gentlemen. This is the North Affair Podcast, Conversations Without Barriers. I'm your host, Doug from Ontario, Canada. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Be safe out there. See you next time.